That was completely fake, Sarah.
You cannot say that it's an honest mistake when you're purposely putting out information that you know to be false.
Here to discuss, Katrina Pearson, an America First policy spokesperson and former Trump campaign national spokeswoman, Vince Colonnese, the Daily Caller editorial director, and back with us, Gina Loudon. Katrina, I got to tell you, Sarah Huckabee Sanders, that was an amazing stance she took today. She fought back, and I thought it was ironic with CNN calling President Trump a bully for calling out Don Lemon, that then you would have senior members of the White House press corps, trying to really bullying Sarah Huckabee Sanders.
Well, that's exactly what was happening, and you could hear the frustration in her voice having to even deal with this type of questioning. And you would have to be brand new to cable news, Charles, to see it any other way. As Sarah mentioned, this is purposefully misleading the American public since December 1st. We're only the end of the second week of December, and we've had how many stories now be retracted from CNN itself? Just this Friday had to fix the story that they put out. We've had ABC News, a story that actually impacted the stock market. Then we had Bloomberg. It seems to be a daily basis now where media outlets are constantly putting out misleading information about this president and his administration.
Let's listen to in the very beginning what Acosta from CNN tried to defend the media and Brian Ross.
The ABC report by Brian Ross, I think that was pretty misleading to the American people, and I think that it's very telling that that individual had to be suspended because of that reporting. I think that shows that the network took it seriously and recognized that it was a problem.
All right, Gina, what the mainstream media is saying, hey, we get it wrong, but we apologize quickly. Is that good enough for you?
Not good enough for me. I'm so glad that Sarah Huckabee Sanders took the stance she did today. There's a certain amount of damage, Charles, that's done when the story is reported at all, even if it is corrected and retracted later, even if people are fired. Because so often that same lamestream media that covers the story wrong in the first place then doesn't report the corrections or the retractions, as we all know. So there's already a certain amount of damage done. But also think back to the insincerity here. Think back to the Obama administration. How many corrections and retractions did they have to make on Obama? I would bet in his whole presidency, not as many as they make in a week with this president.
Well, certainly the retractions and corrections are never the headlines, right? Vince, exactly. It's getting really ugly. I mean, today, that scene was really appalling, I think. And again, I just applaud Sarah Huckabee Sanders because she stood her ground, but she really shouldn't be put in that position, I think.
Well, I think it was important for the White House to do this, to get into this fight, because it highlights for Americans the state of the American press, which, by the way, think about all of the mistakes. If you were saying that a bunch of press outlets were to make mistakes, you would think they would fall on both sides of the aisle. They don't. They all fall in the direction of going after Trump in a way that was unfair, which suggests to you that as they go into these stories, they're assuming malice. They're very credulous about stories that harm the president rather than help him. And I think that's a huge tell. And by the way, a clear sign of why voters in Alabama are skeptical of the press reporting, whether or not it's true on Roy Moore. The skepticism that we're seeing in the polls is reflective of the fact that the press often makes these mistakes in the directions of slandering Republicans.
Katrina, you think that'll play a role in the election tomorrow?
Oh, absolutely. There's absolutely no question that this is playing a role. We've seen this not just in this last election cycle. It's gotten progressively worse since Obama took office, that the press is out there really maligning conservatives with the help of some establishment Republicans, which is another thing that I think is helping Roy Moore in his election tomorrow. And voters are really tired of what's happening. And it's affecting everything, Charles. And to Gina's point, this does damage. The headline is what does the damage. And it's not just the damage against a party or a person. There are people involved in a lot of these cases. Their livelihoods are damaged. Their families are ruined. And you cannot fix that with a retraction. And that is the greater problem here. Yeah,
and you would think that the media knows they have that kind of power and they would wield it with more consideration.
Absolutely.
Thank you all very, very much. Now.